Thank you, Santiago. You even saved some time.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do now is open for questions, and then in 15 minutes, we're going to give you the next 3 talks, and then another 15 minutes. Then we should recover the time we spend on lunch. Okay, so the first question, and we have to be objective in the question and in the answer. Otherwise, we're going to give another speech for each question and each answer. I don't think so. Use the microphone next to you. But you have to turn on. Yeah, now it's on.
Yeah, turned on automatically. Now it's on. Okay. Now, Roy, it's a very short question. Do you think our data that we're keeping, metrics we're keeping on food waste and loss, are disaggregated enough for us to know what is the situation with respect to protective foods?
And of the 3 can answer, right?
A simple answer is no. And we need a lot more, no. We absolutely don't know that, but that is an intention we need to have so that we are actually driving the food system towards more nourishing and nutritious foods.
Yolanda.
A question for Santiago. I imagine selling this application is your business. Have you thought of partnering with someone in order to get some funding to make this application being used broadly in other parts of Latin America, for example?
Yes. Actually, we already had offers to expand, Ecuador as well. But we mainly tried to focus and really cover Buenos Aires, to have a proper system that can really be sustainable and have a future. Because if we start this business model everywhere, we can really control it and we can really be sure that it has a future. And the most important thing is to have a proper business model that it has a way to survive by its own, that it's logical to use it, to say to everyone, every restaurant, every grocery store, that the reasonable way to go is by using winning in Latin America. It's not that they have to have faith in environmental future or in the planet, but the proper way to go is by not wasting food. It's just as simple as that.
Okay, thank you. Marcello?
I also want to ask something to Santiago. What was the origin of the idea? What idea came to your mind? You were inspired by another model, or is original from Argentinian minds?
It's not we actually took different ideas that already existed in the world. One is Too Good To Go, that exists here in Europe. While I studied here, I used it, and I thought it was excellent because it engaged an issue that it really concerned me, and it got me to save some money. And different ideas that were presented in Australia and the US. So with my colleagues, with my associates, we thought of taking the best ideas from everywhere and to adjust it to have a proper fit in what was the market of Argentina and as well Latin America, that it wasn't actually the same as in Europe or the first world. There's not the same post-capitalist ideas in Argentina than in the rest of the world. So we had to adjust it to have a proper communication of our own. So it had the seed, the original idea, is already presented in the rest of the world. We had to adjust it to the mindset of us, Latin American people.
Okay, thank you. Now, Massimo, right?
A question to Roy. Roy, do you know what is the composition of who is buying this bond of the bank? The reason I am asking is because the green bonds are not successful, and that's also sustainability and so on. Still, they are not at the level. So what is different here, apart from the AAA of the World Bank, which supports the bond? What is the incentive for these people to invest in this bond?
I'm actually not the World Bank, so, and Gita, who was supposed to be here, unfortunately, she had a family emergency. My understanding is there are a number of institutional funds, pension funds, that find this to be in harmony with the intention of their investors, and so they're trying to align their portfolio. But I don't have a good answer for you, so I apologize.
Okay, our president now, Von Braun, has a question.
Given what you, Roy, just said, I'm not asking you the question, but I asked Ben Falk for a comment. You proposed a financial mechanism, a fund. How would that be complementary with the bond idea? Can the two, the World Bank bond thing and your proposed financing facility, can they be structured in a complementary, maybe joint way?
That's a very good question. In principle, the proceeds of the World Bank bond are used through World Bank channels, but please, if the lady from World Bank wants to correct me, please do. But what I've understood from Gita Sethi is that the proceeds of the green bond, the 1.8 billion now, will be used through the normal World Bank channels, which means government support exclusively. So if governments would decide to use part of that budget, of course, that budget support that they receive from World Bank, well, they will have to use it for food loss reduction, but whether they do that in a public-private partnership or not is then up to the governments. So that is something that World Bank doesn't really have the full control of, and especially, of course, private sector in principle is not involved until individual governments decide to do so. So, I mean, it's good to of course, attach SDG goals to government support that World Bank gives, but it gets kind of mixed up in the entire budgeting process of a national government. So, on my personal behalf, I would argue, and I'm happy to see that with some of the multilateral institutions, for instance, IFAD, that the statute gets wider so that there's more directly a possibility for public-private partnership.
And just to add on, I mean, I think even though 1.8 billion sounds like a lot of money, it's actually not in relation to the real problem. The World Bank issues anywhere from $35 to $70 billion in different kinds of bonds. And so this is a relatively small amount against a very large problem.
Okay, so any further question to these three first speakers? I just want to kind of request that anything we do must have impacts, right? And normally in science we speak about social impact, economic impact, environmental impact, health impact. It would be nice if at the end of this section we can come with what will be the impacts if we reduce 10% of the waste, 20 or half, as was said this morning by, I forgot the name from here. Okay, yeah. Okay, so it would be nice if at the end of this section we discuss a little bit what people think will be the impact. Because if there is no economic impact, social impact, or any impact, who you think will get in this boat, right? We have to convince people about this whole thing. We know it's a problem. But it has to be a problem with big impact and good for everybody. Okay, so we're now going to start the second round of talks. And I will immediately invite Selina Ju. Selina? Oh, Selina, please.
Yes.
Use your time.
Working.